Call to order this joint workshop with the Planning Commission for a comprehensive plan update, August 17th, 2021. Don?
Thank you, Madam Mayor, Board. So we're here tonight in this joint workshop with you and the Planning Commission to give you an update of where we are with the comprehensive plan. There's been some work and some things that have happened since the last time we've met. So the goal tonight is to get you up to speed of where we are with the project. And with that, I'll turn it over to the consultant, Freeze Nichols, Don Warwick.
Thank you. I'm going to try and juggle multiple things here. We wanted to set up the room so that I didn't have my back to anybody. So, Madam Mayor, board members, planning commissioners, thank you very much for inviting us to come and give you an update to the comprehensive plan project. We'll just get started. I think that you all had a preview of the presentation, so I'm going to try and hit the highlights and leave time, of course, for us to have a conversation at the end. So today we're going to cover just a project update, look at the schedule and steps in the process, also talk a little bit about public engagement. We've done quite a bit of public engagement since I was here last and kind of did the kickoff orientation type discussion with the board and planning commission. We'll talk about the vision and guiding principles as well as goals that will kind of form the structure of the plan and kind of shape the recommendations that will be action steps leading from the plan itself. We'll talk about how that plan development comes along, how the plan's coming along in the process, and a little bit about next steps. So, by way of an update, this is just an overview of the planning process, and you'll see that we're attacking this project in 4 steps, 4 phases, and the first being background and analysis, reviewing existing planning and policy documents that the city has already developed, and also working on establishing and understanding a baseline of the demographics and the existing conditions here in the community. That's the community snapshot. That phase also involved a visioning process to establish a series of guiding principles and a vision statement for the plan. Phase 2 is where we are today. Phase 2 is really, as far as the time goes, the bulk of the project falls within this phase, and that's when we're really looking at drafting the content for the various plan elements or chapters, and those are listed there. Implementation strategy is phase 3. That is establishing the actual means and metrics of getting the job done. So the plan itself defines a lot of recommendations. It sets goals and establishes that the community wants to move in a certain direction. Implementation strategy is sort of your playbook as to how that actually comes to fruition. And then, of course, the 4th phase is the adoption process. So the project schedule looks like this. We are at the first, green arrow or carrot there on the left is where we are today, and basically the things above that have been accomplished. We have conducted 3 meetings with the Comprehensive Plan Advisory Committee, as well as orientation meetings with yourselves and that committee, as stakeholder interviews, and 2 community meetings, an online community survey, and right now earlier today we conducted that 3rd CPAC meeting, which was really focused on the housing component of the plan. So moving forward, I highlighted in blue the community outreach efforts so that you could see kind of in light blue, because there's a lot of blue on that slide. The light blue bars on the left are community engagement type activities related to the plan development. The green arrows are activities that involve some type of public meeting, i.e. coming here to give you this update, or the adoption process where there will be public hearings. Okay, just some highlights with regard to the public engagement efforts that we've undertaken so far. First, I will say that in addition to the outreach that I'm going to kind of highlight on a few slides, we also have an active project website. Through that website, as well as through signups at different on-site activities, we have more than 325 people that are registered subscribers to get updates, monthly email updates as to the project status. So we send those out, and if you're not registered, you might choose to do so through the website, or just let us know and we can put you on that list. This first public engagement summary is the open house meeting. This was conducted on March 18th, and we had 27 folks attend in person. The information that we received is here, and what we gathered. This is really just a snapshot, but what we gathered from this group of individuals was an understanding of what their top priorities are. In this case, they were identified as public services and facilities, economic development, and transportation and mobility. We also included on here, just to highlight the things that we provided boards so that people could tell us which statements they agreed with most and which they disagreed with regard to the community. And what we heard was that they did agree that Siloam Springs has a good range of local employment opportunities, that Siloam Springs is a vibrant place with a positive community brand, that the library is welcoming and offers a variety of programs and materials for all ages, and that emergency services like police and fire meet or exceed expectations. So those were things that people found as positives within the community. Things that they disagreed with, and things maybe that draw some attention. So there was a statement that said, I would like more retail and commercial services. There was a statement related to a good variety of cultural, art, and historic facilities. So people disagreed that there was enough of that there were enough of those facilities and opportunities in the community. Similarly, activities and entertainment that I enjoy. So it looks like people are looking for more of those, and more choices related to commuting and moving around the community without, without an automobile. And finally, housing for all age groups, such as students, young professionals, and seniors. So from the feedback that we received here, and also from the online survey, which asked the same questions, provided the same type of opportunity for feedback, we determined that a lot of these were similar. So while we only had about 30 people that attended in person, we had 699 people participate with this survey information through the online survey. And that was offered, I want to say we had that available for 2 months early this year in the spring, February through March. So again, some of the information that we heard from the individuals that attended in person was very similar to what we heard from the online participants. 2 of the 3 top priorities were the same. And some of the agreed with or disagreed with statements were very similar. So in addition to those stated from the online or the in-person, the online participants felt that Siloam Springs is an attractive community, and also that improving water and air quality is important. So those were 2 additional positive statements. And I think the only difference, the additional negative statement or disagreed with statement, was that Siloam Springs does a good job in keeping existing businesses open and helping them expand. So another area of focus. So I know that online surveys, in this case, this was an anonymous attitudinal survey. We were looking to get people's opinions. And I know oftentimes it's challenging to identify that there was not ballot stuffing, or one individual didn't take the survey multiple times in order to kind of emphasize their opinion versus anybody else's. We did go back and we looked at the metadata behind the survey to understand where the IP addresses were coming from and how many individuals were responding utilizing the same IP addresses. We feel very confident that there was not a ballot stuffing situation that occurred. There were a lot of responses coming from an IP address that is attributed to the city. The city had 2 kiosks established for people to utilize to take the survey. So we feel like that's very much in line with what they were there for. That was the purpose of those kiosks. So, all right. So that was the first round of public engagement, an in-person event as well as the online public survey. That occurred in March, and well, I think that we closed the final survey at the end of March. So understanding that information, we started to build material for a larger community event to start talking more specifically about land use, which is sort of the foundation of the future land use or future comprehensive plan. And so that activity happened in the end of June. So June 29th, we had a meeting at the community building, and 76 folks attended. We had a tabletop exercise where people worked together in groups to talk about how they felt the land use distribution should be looking forward to our plan horizon, which is a 2040 timeline. For individuals who were not able to attend the in-person event on June 29th, we replicated that event with a website feature that included the same survey questions that we asked people in person, as well as provided a map that people could utilize to put markers and comments, very similar to the activity that they were able to do in person in the room. That event was live for 21 days. We had 41 participants, and so we combined the information that we received in person and in the online event to understand the feedback from that activity. One thing that was really nice about the in-person component of this was at the end of the session, where the groups were able to, kind of collaborate and work with their map information. Each group was able to present to the larger group, to the 76 people present, and talk about the things that they wanted to see occur, the goals that they had, their desires for where different land uses should be within the community, and what they kind of felt like were aspirational but attainable goals for Siloam Springs. So all of that sort of leads into what the community wants to be and how we shape the vision and guiding principles for the plan. And I put in your packets this note just so that you would have an understanding of what the slides look like without a whole lot of explanation. But what we'll talk about is the guiding principles and the vision statement. Get my notes here. All right. So these are the first four. So these guiding principles and the ones that will be on the next page or the next slide were developed by the CPAC, but they are responsive to and collecting the feedback that we've received from the survey respondents and the in-person activities that have been conducted. The statements connected to each value better define why that is important to the residents. Okay, oops. There we go. Some of these values are already firmly in place. They're very recognizable within the community, and others are more aspirational and represent the direction that the community wants to take moving forward. As the plan comes together, we'll use these guiding principles to ensure that recommendations are responsive to the community's values. All right, and so the feedback that we've received through all of the various engagement activities led to a vision statement that was then vetted by the Comprehensive Plan Advisory Committee. So the draft vision statement reads that Siloam Springs is a modern, mid-sized city with a small-town feel. We are a welcoming, safe, and vibrant community, celebrating our rich history and a connection to the natural environment. With a pride of place, we enjoy diverse and inclusive neighborhoods, unique destinations, and thriving businesses, supporting our residents and the region. All right. So as we start to dive a little bit deeper into the plan chapters, also referred to as plan elements, we're getting more and more focused on specific actions and that will advance the community's vision and implement the plan. So we have a series of draft goals that were provided, and I'm just going to hit the highlights on these, and we'll come back at the end of the presentation so that we can have a little more constructive conversation. I'd like to get your feedback on some of these goals to see if they are kind of hitting the mark or if we need to make some adjustments. So goals related to land use. There are probably more goals in this section than any of the others, and like I mentioned before, land use sort of forms the cornerstone of your long-range plan. Where and how different developments occur within the community have a long-term impact on how you grow, what the economics look like, what the transportation looks like. There's a whole lot that just plays into land use. And so the goals here, we want to ensure that we're hitting all of the highlights with regard to the type of development that you feel is going to be most advantageous long range, and how that addresses the different needs and desires that the community has. Transportation and mobility. This is more than just where vehicles move around the community, but addressing all different modes of transportation. So people walking, people on bikes, of course, personal automobiles. Want to make sure that we're addressing the way that people come into the community. We know that you have some key gateways, primarily areas like Highway 59 and 412. This is oftentimes the only thing that people see of the community, and we want to make sure that those transportation components represent and sort of show the character of the city as well. So some of the things that are in this series of goals will address those types of elements. Economic development, based upon the feedback that we've heard from the community, we know that there's a desire to support and enhance or expand your existing economic base, to address existing businesses, wherever they are within the community, but also build opportunities so that there are resources for new businesses coming into Siloam Springs. Housing. We did talk with the CPAC members earlier today about housing, and so these kind of goals related to housing sort of roll up into three topics related to housing choice, neighborhood design, and housing conditions, neighborhood conditions. Resiliency. So this particular plan element was originally called livability. We modified the title of it because we felt like it was overlapping the community character plan element, and we really wanted to have a section within the plan that speaks to the community's ability to manage things like natural disasters, environmental hazards, pandemics, workforce demands, and generally the components of a healthy community. So we feel like those are things that represent a resilient community, and these goals will help to address those efforts. So community character, that's really about expressing the DNA of Siloam Springs. What is it that's special about this community? How can that be expressed in the way that the community develops? Is that through activities like festivals and cultural events, or is that through different types of built elements, signage, lighting, wayfinding, things that are recognizable as Siloam Springs? So that's what the community character element will discuss. And public facilities and services, super practical. This is making sure that the community provides the services that are necessary for everyone to have a high quality of life, to ensure that city services are expanded in a reasonable way, and ongoing coordination of all of those things, of course, is necessary and important. So this will take into account service area boundaries for different utilities, as well as city services, such as fire and police. Okay. And just in talking about plan development, this is really just to give you an idea of how the plan is going to come together. The different chapters of the plan, this is what we're calling the framework, will include those early phase 1 activities, the community snapshot and the visioning section, and then the plan development items, which include future land use, transportation, housing, economic development, resiliency, community character, and public facilities and utilities. capping off that whole effort will be a look at implementation. And as I mentioned, that will include like the playbook, the action steps, and the and the ability, the metrics to measure how successful we are in implementing those recommendations from the previous chapters. Okay, so I talked a little bit earlier about the goals and recommendations, which we're going to come back and revisit a bit. Land use is the cornerstone of the plan. We've started the work on the future land use map, and that'll drive a lot of the decision making through the coming years and during the plan's tenure. So I think the only thing that I wanted to mention here is to talk about the fact that there was a lot of work done through the community involvement, the second round of community involvement particularly, to develop a future land use map. We're not done with that. We know that there's a desire from the staff and from the community to bring that back so that people have another opportunity to provide input. So we're working on what that's going to look like. There'll be more information on that to come. And before we get to, I think, my next steps, maybe we should go back and talk a little bit about goals. Any questions before we start talking more specifically about the different goals in the land use, or excuse me, in the plan chapters?
Directors, P&Z members? Not at this time? Okay.
So we're taking notes in the back. This is sort of an open mic opportunity. Just to get your feedback. As I mentioned earlier, these are draft goals. This is what we have developed based upon the public input that we've heard so far. But we want to make sure that this is reflecting what you all feel like are the highest, the priorities of the community. So we can go through them each one. I know we distributed this in advance. I'm not sure how much time you all have had to spend with reviewing these goals, but I wanted to give you all an opportunity to give us some input, have a conversation if you've got questions or want to add or edit.
Well, I do. So on land use, so on your plan, and I just did a flyby when you had the workshop down there,
Mm-hmm.
and I wanted community input, so I kind of stood back. You have included that. We've got the City Lake project. We've got a greenway future use south of town, southwest of town, with a master connectivity plan, which they're not actually in town, but they're going to skirt around Siloam, which will be, impacting us because eventually we're going to have these arteries that will flow to these places. But when you looked at Siloam in general, have you identified spaces that for a green space, or have you already included that in your map?
We have identified some open space or sort of preservation type areas that would have a light touch with regard to development. Most likely they would be large lot residential or agricultural type uses. Those are primarily at the very edge of the existing city limits and into what we call the planning area. So we are actually projecting land use outside the city limits in the area that the city has identified as their future planning area. So there's an understanding of when those properties may be annexed into the city, what the long-range vision is for development. So there is a land use category that would be largely preserved, and I think we've identified it as rural residential.
So along with that, are you throwing in there, it's kind of some of the stuff I'm doing these days, but we have the Nature Conservancy, the Arkansas Natural Heritage Commission, A&H, so a bunch of acronyms out there, people that love land and like to preserve land. So as we throw into that, I'm thinking as we earmark that, I want to keep in mind that there is monies available that is not directly the Siloam tax dollar money that's available for those to, in the future, do these conservation areas to create these green spaces. I think that adds value to the land use. It lets the citizen of Siloam know that, we're looking out towards the future, not your tax dollars, but the state and federal dollars that are available. That's one of my, as we look at that, I think of money's down the road, because, we're going to spend a lot of money tonight. So I just want people, as we build this map, as this goes along, that we're looking at these other opportunities to create those spaces.
Okay, I think that's very good guidance. Thank you. We'll take that into account. Other thoughts with regard to land use? Are these goals reasonable? Are these goals that we can, what we'll do, each of these 6 will have at least one, if not more, specific recommendations that guide the actual implementation of that goal. So while you may have a goal that says use the comprehensive plan to guide decisions related to growth and development, there will be additional supporting statements that reflect things like evaluating development applications, utilizing the future land use map, or modifying land development regulations to ensure that the types of development identified in the long-range plan can be accomplished within the community. So these are the types of things that we feel are a good way to capture those recommendations. Okay, I'm going to go to the next. All right, with regard to transportation and mobility, I mentioned before that we're looking at all different modes of transportation. Greenways and gateways are something that we heard quite a bit of feedback on, especially at the land use workshop, so that people felt like there needed to be a way to really distinguish Siloam Springs from neighboring communities. As we grow together, potentially with Gentry or other communities nearby, we want to make sure that people understand that they know when they've entered Siloam Springs. There's a different character, there's something special, there's something recognizable that you're now in a different community. So we have one goal that is really focused on that, utilizing a gateway concept to really mark the entryways to the city. We heard a lot also about Highway 412. It's a main corridor within the community, and it's often what people experience of Siloam Springs. So leveraging that to promote a positive image is something that is identified as a goal. Promoting pedestrian and bicycle connectivity, proactively planning for roadway improvements and connections. You all have a master street plan, you have a master sidewalk plan. Both of those are considered as as the recommendations are, formulated for this particular element of the plan. Any thoughts on transportation?
I have a question. On the survey, on the open house number 1 survey, on the most disagreed with statements, it said, I would like more retail and commercial services within walking distance of my home. And that was a statement that was disagreed.
Yes.
So are you saying that most of our citizens aren't concerned about being able to walk to any of the retail establishments?
The way that we are, yes, because the additional feedback that we've heard is that there may be desirable services, neighborhood services, that should be in proximity to neighborhoods, and that's not something that people can easily access today.
Okay, because in my mind, we have always tried to be a walkable community, which to me that means you do have the ability to walk to some of those types of facilities.
Yes, that statement's consistent with other things that we've heard as well. Yes, sir. In the survey, we had in-person 27 and in online 699. And in the second round of feedback, we had 76 people in person and 41 people online. Yeah.
Anyone from P&Z that would like to ask a question or have any comments? No? Okay.
Economic development, this is a really broad category, and it does, similar to land use, kind of affect a whole lot of different things. We felt like goals that really focused on building strong and resilient economies, so diversity and economic opportunity were important. Business retention and recruitment, as well as supporting existing businesses, were the key focuses with regard to economic development. So any thoughts on those goals and how those shape your economic development vision and future?
Will this give us some idea on how to expand our economic development, and especially downtown, because we do have, I think, citizens that have lived here a long time, were born and raised here, that really don't see the economic value in our downtown area. Will you be able to give us a way to overcome that?
So we will be digging in a little deeper on economic development. We need to finish the future land use component so that we can develop projections and do some number crunching based upon the anticipated land uses and how that impacts the economic development component of the plan. So that is on the horizon. In the next couple of months, we'll be able to, like I say, dig a little bit deeper and give you more direct understanding of how the land use and other recommendations within the plan will positively, hopefully, impact your economic development situation. And so, yes, in a long answer short, we will have more data that will help to kind of paint that picture for you. Housing. As I mentioned before, these housing component will sort of roll up into three big overriding goals related to housing choice, neighborhood conditions, and the design of neighborhoods. So any thoughts on whether, like I said, also the various recommendations? There'll be at least one, probably in this case, multiple recommendations related to each of these three larger goals in the housing context. So when we talk about a diverse range of housing choices, one thing that we discussed with the CPAC members today was what that looks like. Within the surveys and the feedback that we've received, we understand that people are looking for both affordable housing as well as high-end housing to sort of fill gaps that are currently in the community, where there are not as many options for people. We also looked at what we call missing middle, different housing types that sort of are not really present in a real strong way within the community that may also address how affordability and also the different choices that people have with regard to housing. We talked quite a bit about neighborhood design, whether or not things like detention ponds become amenities to communities, desirability of maintaining open space or requiring parks in neighborhoods of a certain size, and cluster developments, parking, how and where that should be accommodated for different types of residential developments. So all of those would become more specific recommendations that roll up into these goals. Any thoughts on housing? Mm-hmm. So a lot of the feedback that we've heard is that...
Excuse me, Dawn, would
yes,
you
sir.
repeat the question just for the record?
Oh, sure.
Thank you.
So the question was to provide a little more detail about providing parks within new residential developments. Is that correct? Okay. So the feedback that we've heard, the conversation that we've had with the CPAC members, is that it would be desirable for neighborhoods to have better access or closer access to open space and parks. Some of that depends upon the scale of the project, so that's not been determined, but there is a desire to require, potentially, that new development of a certain size would incorporate parks. Those may or may not be public parks, most likely they would be, but there's lots of details to be worked out with regard to maintenance and responsibilities, but definitely the goal of giving people greater access and connectivity to green space.
You mentioned something else about parking too, didn't you, in the neighborhoods?
So there
the
was a
communities?
pretty lively conversation today about what parking is needed for a residential context. Different types of neighborhoods, of course, have different needs. A suburban neighborhood is going to have a different type of parking need than a near downtown neighborhood would. So we had a lively discussion about whether or not there need to be residential parking permit systems in a downtown context, whether or not on-street parking is appropriate, whether design standards related to how long your driveway is and how many vehicles you should be able to stack in the driveway without overhanging the sidewalk. So those are all components that would address residential parking.
I'm very glad to hear that. I think that's important.
All right, resiliency. This is a little bit of a grab bag, but we're finding more and more that resiliency is a topic that, like I said, it's a little bit of a grab bag, but it does sort of incorporate a lot of things that help to encourage a high quality of life for a community, a healthy community. This could also address hazard mitigation planning. So not only natural disasters, but others that need to be sort of in mind. And I will say that our experience is that there is more and more funding available for hazard mitigation planning. That includes things like floodplains. You'll have a lot of water within the community and a lot of floodplain. So it's important that you have some plans on the shelf that will help you to address issues that occur, oftentimes beyond your control. And so that's what the resiliency chapter is really intended to do, is to help sort of gather up some of those things and give them some shape. Okay. Questions? All right. Okay, community character. This is how you express kind of the true character of the city. We've talked about corridors to some degree, the entryways at least. There are also ways to ensure that your corridors having the right components, whether they are lighting, signage, sidewalks, are providing the types of infrastructure that people want to have as their front door for businesses. That's a component of community character. Gathering spaces, similar to Memorial Park, and other types of recognizable features that you can kind of claim as your own. The historic charm of downtown, that's a community character element. And anything that allows you to express and protect the image of Siloam Springs is important, and will have a place within this chapter. We've heard several times that there's a desire for more arts and culture opportunities within the community. We also heard a lot about, and I don't know that it's fallen into anything other than maybe the land use chapter so far, we heard quite a lot about people wanting to ensure that there are locations for and opportunities for both youth sports as well as adult recreation. So again, parking and wayfinding activities specific to downtown. Some of these will be recommendations that we're able to pull from your already adopted downtown master plan. So we're not going to redo the work that's been done in other planning efforts, but there may be activities or recommendations related to several of these things that we derive from other plans that have already been adopted. Questions on community character?
Yes. So you're aware that we have a Sager Creek Advisory Committee that will may or may not pull from the consent agenda tonight, and so that's kind of a beginning of, I think, maybe fits into land use and community character, because I believe it's specifically going to discuss our little vein that runs through town.
Okay, excellent. We'll make a note of that, and then we'll watch the meeting tonight to see what happens.
Oh, nothing's much going to happen, I don't think.
Okay.
I can't tell Philip's wearing them out. I can't see his face when you say it.
Fair enough. Okay. Related to public facilities and services, this is really making sure that the core services of the city, the purpose that the municipality is here for, has some shape, has a good plan for the future. We will take into account the service area plans for your different utilities, and really just talk about coordination of services and where there are needs. We understand that there may be a need for a new fire station. We're looking at the locations that would be appropriate for that, and just understanding how the community is going to grow, sort of basing that understanding on the future land use map, where new growth is anticipated to occur. That sort of ties back to making sure that you can continue to provide services and facilities to those areas appropriately. Thoughts on this? All right. Here we are back at the beginning. Really, the next steps, I mentioned that we're going to frame up another opportunity for public input on the future land use map. I anticipate that happening within the next 3 to 4 weeks. So stay tuned. We'll get that information out to you. We're really just sort of discussing format and timeline at this point. We do have meetings established for the CPAC. We'll meet in November to talk about resiliency and economic development, and in January to talk about community character. And maybe one other topic. The big idea boards, this will be another opportunity for public input. Early in 2022, we will be able to have a greater refinement of the goals and the big ideas expressed within the plan in all of the different chapters. So big idea boards is basically going to be an effort, a self-directed effort, where we will put boards around the community as well as online, so people can go and review and understand kind of the progress of the plan and provide input on the various goals and recommendations that have been developed. So we'll get you more information on that as well. It's sort of still in the planning phases. All right. That is the end of my presentation, unless there are questions that I can answer.
Directors, any questions?
Yes, so when we did the downtown master plan, we kind of went through the same format and participated on the tabletops, gave public input. And one of the things was, what is that number for a community our size? And I don't want to say I'm always disappointed, but I guess I'm going to say I'm always disappointed because I know people want to be more involved, but they just don't show up. So your experience, are you looking at the numbers that you showed us, the $6.99 online, the 74 in this, and then we break that down for each event. Are those decent numbers, and do you have any experience that we can, what can we do as a board? What do we need to do as a city to motivate citizens to show up to these events? And, because we have a pretty good time span there, and I just don't know, I'm always curious, what can we do better?
Well, I think that the numbers are pretty good. Every community has a different sort of personality and different makeup of people that are comfortable engaging online versus in person. I think you're getting a pretty decent cross-section of the community. Every community always wants to see more, so I don't begrudge that at all. I think that more is always better when it comes to getting exposure to these types of efforts and getting people brought into the process. We are working with the city's communication officer to develop some additional sort of maybe video segments or snippets that can go out through social media channels. I know that not everybody participates in social media, but that is a pretty prominent platform anymore to get the word out. The project website, so I think the project website, social media channels, we're doing monthly emails to the subscriber list. We are trying to ensure that there's some activity or some conversation happening pretty regularly. The board, the planning commission, anybody involved in the city can share their knowledge of the project to your networks through whatever means you have, whether that's Twitter accounts or emails, etc. So I would say anything that you get, give it a signal boost, share it to everybody that you know, and try to get people involved and understanding of the project. I'm trying to make sure that we, get some newspaper articles every once in a while. Mark's pretty good about following up on these things. So I think that those are the types of efforts that we really, we can use your assistance in trying to pull people into. I'm encouraged by the number of people that are kind of following things. They may not be real vocal, but you know that they're there because they keep checking those emails, checking the websites, going to the social media accounts. So I am encouraged by that. And yeah, we'll just keep plugging and we'll work with the city however they can come up with new ways. We're happy to feed them information and help to keep those channels active.
I will say I like I like the numbers on the survey summary with the participants, and I like the breakdown of the age groups. And I'm encouraged by, we've got that age 20 to 44, and I'm always thinking these projects here are really, it's next generation. I mean, that's really where we're getting at. So I'm not in the 65 plus yet. Having said that, I'm in an older bracket to where, I just kind of want to ease away, and I'm really curious what that age bracket looks like. I think that's a good number. Would you agree? I mean,
yeah, absolutely. And what I really think
in person is my the biggest one, I think.
Well, and as you know, we've kind of rolled this out during a pandemic, so I think we're doing a pretty good job given circumstances,
Sure.
But it doesn't mean that there aren't other ways to get the word out. Your recognition of the age groups and their participation, I think, is pretty relevant. And just so you all know, just looking at the demographic breakdown for the entire community, that's very representative of the response rate that we've received. So the breakout of different age groups and how they represent within the city is very similar to how we've, the responses that we've heard through the survey and other activities. So.
Directors, anybody else? Commissioners? No?
Right. Thank you guys so very much. I appreciate your time.
Thank you, Don. We appreciate it. If we are done, then I will adjourn this joint workshop. We are adjourned. Call to order this regular meeting of the Siloam Springs Board of Directors for August 17th, 2021. Roll call.
Sappington,
Here.
Smiley,
Here.
Burns,
Here.
Hunt,
Here.
Whistler, Allen,
Here.
Carroll.
Here.
At this time, if you would, please stand with me as Director Burns leads us in a word of prayer and remain standing for our Pledge of Allegiance.
Father, tonight I am thankful and grateful for our freedom of religion and our freedom of speech. In the past couple of days, I am eternally grateful for a volunteer military that has carried a burden of our freedom for the past 20 years, and I thank you for their sacrifice and service, and I pray that we may remember them, and we may be thankful for those that are present, and always be grateful that they have served what we called them to do. In your name we pray, amen. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Thank you. You may be seated. At this time, I would ask that anyone that has an electronic device, please silence that. And I say thank you for that. Next is our presentation for the ADA Fishing Pier and Kayak launch donation, the American Legion family. And Philip?
Madam Mayor, the American Legion Commander Les Carroll is here to present a check to the city.
Thank you. Somebody said I had about 3 minutes to talk. I'll try not to do that. But Mayor, Nations, and the board, friends and family of Siloam Springs, I'm Les Carroll. I'm the commander of the American Legion this year. I'm retired Army, and my father served in World War II, and on his discharge it says, anxiety, state of manifest anxiety and depression due to 17 months of overseas duty and 6 months of combat. You know, that's what they called shell shock back in the day. It's what we refer to as PTSD today. And I know what it's like to live in a family that has to deal with the results of war, whether it's disability physically or mentally or otherwise. And I served in the military and retired, and I'm thankful that I never had to go overseas and I never had to serve in the combat zone. But for those reasons, I'm very willingly embrace the pillars of the American Legion, which is veterans, security of our nation, Americanism, and children and youth. We at Siloam Springs are happy to provide service to our community of veterans and the families and through the organizations that we have at Siloam Springs Post 29. We have the post members. We have a group of spouses and granddaughters and grandsons that we call the auxiliary. We also have the Sons of the American Legion. That's the descendants, the male descendants of anyone who has served. And we also have the Legion Riders, and you hear about them once in a while in the news because they're getting ready to start their legacy run for the youth programs in the American Legion, and they're going to start it over here, I believe at Rogers, right? And we have a lot. We have quite a few programs through this family. We call it our family, Legion family. We try to help the veterans, their families, their friends, and the community that they live in. If we help the community that the veterans live in, we also help the veteran, because of, if the community is built up and made aware of the veterans, it makes it better for them to live in the community where it's friendly to them. And this community is friendly to the veterans. As a matter of fact, there's 735 veterans live in this community that we know of. And there's 13.5% of them belong to our American Legion post. So we try to stay involved in the community. And when the city administrator, Philip Patterson, approached us about the ADA fishing pier and the kayak launch, I was more than enthused to get involved. And I took that and went to each one of the Legion members, family members, and presented it to their group. And all of them were enthused to become involved. And for that, because of that, Mayor, we're going to be able to present you with a check for $3,750.
All right, everybody smile.
Thanks, guys.
Christina will have to endorse the back of that big giant check.
Yeah, that big check. I'll take it.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank all of you for your service. Thank you for being here.
Right, at this time, it is the time for public input. The public may address the Board of Directors regarding any item on the consent agenda or any city business not listed on the board's regular agenda. So is there anyone here at this time? You will have 3 minutes at the podium. I need you to state your name and your address, please.
Good evening. My name is Todd Varnado. I live at 217 West Benton Street, which is just 2 blocks down the hill to our west. And I wanted to share an email I sent to all of you as well as our city administrator this weekend in regards to our present situation with what's going on in our town, this pandemic. And I'll just read it. It said, "Hello, sir. I'm not sure what motivates you. For some, it's money. For some, it's freedom. For some, it's simply to help others. My motivation for this email and for showing up tonight is the latter, to stop the spread of this virus, expose the truth, and help as many people as I can. I trust based on your role you serve in, that is yours as well." One of my favorite quotes I first saw in this building on one of our walls in the conference or meeting rooms that says, "I'd like to see a man proud of the place in which he lives. I'd like to see a man live so that his place will be proud of him." That's an Abraham Lincoln quote. And it's one of my favorites. I've tried to live by that ever since. I'll skip this next part. I mentioned, I'd be willing to compensate whomever watches this for whatever their time is worth, because I believe it's important. I sent along with this a video of an ICU COVID nurse who shares the truth about what's going on and lots of facts, and here's a few she points out. Ivermectin is an FDA-approved antiparasitic drug that is on the WHO's list of essential medicines. It won the Nobel Peace Prize in 2015, and over 4 billion doses have been given out around the world. It is currently being given to prevent COVID and treat COVID all over the world, and it is saving lives and helping spread this virus. Back in December, a study was conducted on 1,200 frontline healthcare workers in Argentina. They gave 800 of them prophylactic, which is a preventative form of medication, prophylactic ivermectin, and 400 they did not. Of the 400 that did not take it, 58% of them got COVID. Out of the 800 who were on the ivermectin protocol, which is something we could walk over to Tractor Supply right now and purchase, or you can get it as a prescription, not a single one of those 800 frontline doctors got COVID. I'll repeat, 0 out of 800 who were taking ivermectin got COVID. Why is this not being used in our hospitals, as confirmed by our CEO at Governor Asa's town hall meeting just a few weeks back, or our schools? Why are we doing a vaccine clinic in our school on August 20th with a non-FDA approved experimental drug, but not offering or informing them of this? Unfortunately, for some reason, this kind of information is being suppressed, so I thought I'd share it with potentially the most powerful person and people in our town to be able to do something about this and protect the citizens of Siloam Springs and help get this life-saving information out. As stated on the city website about our government, the city administrator provides leadership, coordination, control, and accountability of all municipal services and programs. I will also note that the 6th major goal listed under his photo on the administration section of our city website is to develop trust-building opportunities to improve two-way communication and ensure follow-through on commitments. With all due respect, sir, you are now informed, as well as are the rest of you, and therefore accountable. I'm also CCing our board members, the mayor, who have been elected and given consent to govern by we, the people of Siloam Springs, as well as our city communications director, as this information needs to be communicated to all of our citizens. In addition, I've copied our school admin staff, board members, and I look forward to your responses. And I want to thank Director Sappington, Risler, and Allen, who I've heard back from so far. Let's come together and end this pandemic once and for all in our town that we all love. We've tried following the protocols of all the three different letter entities, and it hasn't worked. Let's trust real science, real data, real healthcare professionals, and we can end this pandemic. There's no excuses going forward. Thank you.
Is there anyone else? Please state your name and address.
So I'm not going to state my address because your police keep threatening me, so I'm going to tell you my name. I'm well known here, but my name is Blake Jones. I'm here today because I came to you last year and I gave all of you an opportunity to fix things. Director Burns, you told me yourself that to give you an opportunity to fix some things, such as a noise ordinance and all that. It's been a year. The city still has done nothing. Mindy Hunt tried to help me last time in the FOIA videos and things that I had from your officers who continue to violate the rights of the citizens, even up until the meeting that you had last. I was here and your chief of police is threatening to arrest me while your meeting was being conducted in here. And he was telling me that I have to leave this premises. This is a public building, and I'm a citizen of the city, have a right to be here. But for some reason, he felt that he could tell me that I was intimidating your clerks by asking for FOIA information, which I still don't have. I've given many opportunities for the city itself and the officers to do the right thing. There's some of the members of this board who know and have seen the videos and seen the things. The unfortunate thing is that you have a city administrator that defends the police, defends the things that they're doing. You have a city attorney who takes the laws into his own hands and uses his own interpretation contrary to the law, which I presented to him. I've made you guys purchase software just to be able to redact videos, which they were supposed to do since 2001. The city was in violation 17 years of not being able to redact information, not being able for people to go get public documents and videos so that they have a way to say, you know what, you're wrong, I didn't do these things. But the city refused and said, the police department refused and said, well, we're not going to give you those videos because we can't redact that information. We don't have the technology, which they were required to have since 2001. They make stops claiming investigative stops, which under Arkansas 3.1 says that you have to have more than suspicion or conjecture. You have to have a reasonable, articulate reason for probable cause for to stop somebody and detain them, which they don't do. And I have hundreds of videos of them doing these things. I've asked the city, and I don't need any of your help. I'm very well aware that I can go to the federal court building. I'm in and out of there every day. I'm in there right now in front of Timothy Brooks. You guys can look me up if you want to. But I come to you with a reason, because I don't want these people behind me footing the bill for your officers' the wrongdoings. So I'm going to ask one more time, and I'm going to give you 30 days that I see some action being done by this board and by these people. And if you do not, I will take all means necessary, and those people, including you and the chief and everyone who's violated my rights, you have lost qualified immunity because you violated my constitutional rights. And I will bring these people to accountability and bring them before the federal court, which I've done many other people. And if that happens, these people become subject, not the taxpayers behind me. And if I'm made to do that, I don't want to, but I will. So I'm going to ask and plead in one more opportunity that you guys bring these people under justice and ask and look into these things, look into the videos and the things I've provided, and hold them accountable. And if you do not, then I will just bring it upon myself, and I'll take it before the federal court. Thank you very much.
Thank you. Is there anyone else?
Hello, my name is Eric Berkthold. I live at 1100 Hickory Lane. Good to see all you guys. A little bit of context. I brought a couple of concerns to one of the board members a while back, and that person encouraged me to come and express those to the board. These are just a few examples, maybe to give a little bit more context. I think there was maybe some rash decisions that were made over the past year. Of course, I know there's some grace because of what we've been going through, but I think it's also worthwhile to hear those from someone who's been here for their whole life, and just maybe think about actions moving forward, because I don't know what's going to happen, but I fear that there may be more lockdowns and stuff like that coming, and I want to make sure that we get ahead of it rather than just let it happen to us. So 3 instances of things where I think decisions could have been made that were better. You know, and all 3 of these things, none of them are life-threatening problems, okay? So I'm not here to say, I'm not here to pick apart every decision we make as a city. But, you know, last year, around the time COVID was breaking out, we canceled the trash pickup, okay? A small deal. I'd already put the trash down at the end of my driveway, and I was informed that there'd be no trash pickup last spring. But I did manage to get a citation on my door of my house. So I just want to point out it doesn't sound reasonable to say that we're not going to go around and pick up trash, but we are going to send someone out to hand deliver letters and citations to my front door. So if we're really worried about, if we were really worried about contact and virus, I think that maybe that didn't jive with the citation that was issued, and I know some other folks that were given those as well. And the citation was in reference to the trash that was left at the bottom of the driveway. So the second thing was, the Kayak park closure. So it was around last July, June, end of June, June 28th. There was an article written, and the Kayak park was closed once early, and then there was an article written by Arkansas Online. It interviewed Mr. Patterson, and he talked about that people weren't, the general idea of the article or the interview was how people weren't masking or social distancing. So I'll just read a quick excerpt here. Patterson said he's seen few people wearing face masks while he's out in the city. He stressed the importance of wearing face masks due to the increase to the COVID virus. And this is his quote: "I have reports out at the Kayak park. I have reports out at the Kayak park that it's elbow to elbow, no wearing masks, no social distancing, and we can close that Kayak park again," he said. Patterson said he visited a restaurant he chose not to name the previous weekend. At the restaurant, he observed hardly any customers wore masks, and restaurant staff was not insisting customers wear them. So both of those things, at that point, and again, we're talking about a year ago, but at that point we knew that, it was good to be outdoors, that the virus
didn't really do very good outdoors. It was good to have sunshine and vitamin D. So that really didn't seem to make sense with some of the stuff we knew at that time. And it also felt a little bit like a veiled threat that we were going to close the kayak park because people weren't social distancing and making comments about restaurants. The third thing was the Family Aquatic Center. We had reduced stays and hours. Most of the summer, I would estimate we're probably 20% less availability. Yet the folks, those of us, me included, who bought a season pass, the cost of the pass was exactly what it's always been. So I would just say that, and I think some of that was the failure to plan for some of the employees, some of the lifeguards. So those are just 3 examples, and I share them with you just to say, let's try to make better decisions, please. And I appreciate the time letting me speak. Thanks, guys.
Thank you. Is there anyone else? If there is not, at this time, we will move on to the consent agenda. Item A, workshop minutes from August 3rd, 2021. Item B, regular meeting minutes, August 3rd, 2021. Item C, payment plan, Grand River Dam Authority, February 2021 winter storm cost, $3,855,758. Item D, dedication of utility easements, 717 North Mount Olive Street. Item E, change order number 2, Public Works Department, Water Division, Burns and McDonnell Engineering Company, $876,219. Item F, purchase, Public Works Department, Water and Wastewater Services Division for a John Deere 550K crawler dozer, Stribling equipment for $124,876.65. Item G, purchase, Public Works Department, Water and Wastewater Services Division, Hitachi excavator, Stribling equipment, $130,729.95. Item H, budget amendment, Police Department, purchase of qualification turning target system, $39,933.11. Item I, budget amendment, Police Department, vehicle purchase, Old Fort Harley-Davidson, $24,146.03. Item J, appointment of Sager Creek Advisory Committee. Item K, property purchase and utility easement dedication, Electric Department, Moss Substation, Mill Creek Properties, LLC, $10. That is our consent agenda. Directors, do you have any questions, comments?
Madam Mayor,
Yes.
I would like to pull C.
C?
Yes.
Thank you.
Mayor,
Yes?
can we pull E and J also, please?
David?
Madam Mayor, I'd like to pull letter H.
Okay.
And which one did Mindy say?
C.
C?
As in cat?
Yes.
Okay.
Anyone else? If not, do I have a motion to approve the consent agenda, taking off items C, E, and J, and H?
So moved.
Do I have a second?
Second.
We have a motion and a second. Roll call.
Wiley,
Yes.
Burns,
Yes?
Hunt,
Yes.
Rissler,
Yes.
Allen,
Yes.
Carroll,
Yes.
Sappington.
Yes.
Motion is approved. So at this time, we will consider the items that we have removed. Director Hunt, item C. Do you have a question or comment on that?
Yes, a comment. What I gave up in time during the last meeting, I may make up for this meeting. Sorry, Director Burns. I've lost sleep when I write down what I want to comment about, and I have a few written comments here. In regards to our repayment to GRDA for the winter storm. I recently received an email from a citizen, and that email started with, "As your constituent and boss, I demand that you do what I want," in regard to the concern that she had, not related to the winter storm. While she is completely correct in stating that she's my boss, I'm not sure she fully understands that she is one of 17,000 bosses that I report to in the city of Siloam Springs. All of us on this board report to 17,000 bosses, all of whom have differing opinions about what should be done in and for the city of Siloam and its citizens. The differences of opinion make it very difficult to please everyone, so we as board members ultimately have to base our decisions on the greatest impact, either to the majority, or to long-term plans, or to financial impact, or to other things, in order to do what we feel like is best for the city and the citizens that we were elected to represent. Just like we report to the citizens, the city administrator reports to us in our form of government. Among other things, it is the city administrator's job, along with the finance director and us as the board members, to be fiscally responsible on behalf of the city. It is my understanding that that's what he was doing when he presented a plan for recouping what the city owes to GRDA for the winter storm. In his plan, he proposed having electric consumers pay back their portion of cost incurred by all electric users during the storm. Those consumers include all citizens and businesses who use the electric service provided by the city. So yes, in the proposed plan, citizens would have been asked to pay a little extra each month for a period of time in order to recoup cost, but it's because they were consumers of the service for which the service provider's cost increased dramatically due to a winter storm. The proposed plan was just that, a proposal, not a final decision. It was presented to us for feedback, not for a vote. And as part of that plan, consumers would have paid back their share of what was used. It was not a tax. As soon as people saw the newspaper headline about the issue, they assumed the worst about the administrator and some board members and proceeded to perpetuate false information. Back to the proposed plan. With COVID, we've all seen increased costs for groceries, cars, lumber, homes, etc. And that's because the providers of those goods have incurred increased cost and they have passed those increases to us as consumers. All that to say, when I first heard about what the city owes to GRDA, I assumed we would have to pass along cost to the consumers, just like so many other product and service providers have had to do recently. It's easy to assume that increased costs are about increasing profit, but that's not always the case. With that said, there are also times when companies eat increased cost in an effort to maintain goodwill with their customers and consumers, and this may be an opportunity for the city to do so as well. And that's what the city administrator is now recommending based on the input he received from directors at the last meeting. There's no precedent for using reserves for this sort of thing, but if we do use reserves, we will be setting a precedent. In talking with several residents, I heard mixed feelings. Some want reserves to pay as they see that fund is specifically for circumstances such as these, as did some of our directors, while others understood the reasoning behind the plan and were happy to pay back the portion they used. I still think it's important for us to know how using reserves will impact future plans, and it sounds like one impact could be on street improvements. If we as a board decide that some street improvements can wait and that reserves can absorb the extra cost without additional huge impact so that we can avoid passing the cost along to consumers, I'm in favor. While the winter storm was an extraordinary circumstance, the fact that it happened during COVID makes it even more extraordinary. The combination of the two events has increased living expenses for all of our citizens, so if we can do something to help, I am in favor. But I do still want to know the impact of using the reserves.
Thank you, Director Hunt.
Madam Mayor?
Yes, Brad.
I feel like I should follow up since Mindy has accused me of time stealing. You're correct. Thank you for yielding those minutes. I thought, I don't follow a lot of social media because, you know, everybody in the community loves us. But my wife plugged me in recently on what the chatter is out there, and I laugh because I have a sarcastic sense of humor. Somebody called Director Hunt a communist. I thought of the most passive, loving, graceful person I've met recently. I'm like, Lord, that is the farthest from it. And therefore, that's why I don't follow the trash. I met with leaders of industry, old retired gentlemen that drink coffee. They're born and raised in this community. And then before this workshop, walking over, I was on the phone with a young man that will one day run the electrical business of a family in town, and so just a wide variety, and some of the folks were willing to double down. They'd double share. They'd be more than happy to double up. But at the end of the day, the consensus is exactly what we decided at the last meeting, and I look forward to hearing the administrator give us a skinny on the mini, because I advised the young person, and he's not that young, but he's fairly young, and he served in the military, and he admitted sometimes when I get on social media, I get a little crazy, a little hot-headed, a little silly, and and we just had a conversation. I prefer those kind of conversations. And he kind of understood, and I started talking about what we put back in the reserves over the years and what's happening in Siloam. And it was important. This young man didn't just realize what we really have going on, and I just encouraged him to get involved. And they work late hours. They're the backbone of Siloam. They work 6-7 days a week at times, and especially during this time of the year, they're busy. But I think sometimes we forget. We plugged away. We have great stuff going on, and we have to conduct things as a city business. I reminded him it's much like military operations at the public safety, specifically the fire side. You have to sit down and look at all options, and you have to have adult conversations, and you have to look at those numbers. And so whatever we decide tonight, and whatever projects may be pushed back a little bit, example, if in Villaview in Director Hunt's ward, that project's been around for a long time. If we have to kick it back 6 months, I hope that we all stand together and look at the citizens in the eye and say, hey, here's the reason we did that. The other thing I looked at was our consumers, and we started breaking down commercial, and I thought of churches. Churches had to keep the power going, and while they kept that power on and that extra charge, that when the resident goes to the 18 churches that I found online in Siloam, and I'm sure there's more, freedom of religion, it's a fantastic thing. But when these folks go there, guess what they're going to be asked to do? They're going to be asked to pay that extra tithe. Who do you think carries that plate? Who do you think carries that financial burden for those churches? And the more I looked at it, the more I had conversations with folks in the community, and specifically for me, Ward 2, because that is my focus. I stand by, we pay that. I'm open. I like the pay over a year. I appreciate the email from Director Coleman reaching out. Sometimes you think directors are just going to retire and not go away, and I appreciate him coming out of the cobwebs and giving us his 3 cents. Thank you.
Madam Mayor,
Yes.
when this first came at the last board meeting, I expected that we would have some discussion, that it wasn't just going to be an immediate decision. And I did state that I was for the citizen paying for this, because the electric is a business and they are a consumer, and normally consumers the costs do get passed on to the consumer. But I also appreciate what Mindy has said. She stated it very well. The other reason why I voted or discussed the way I did is because we had just come from a workshop, I believe 2 weeks or a month before, where we were talking about street repair, which everybody was wanting. That's all I heard. For quite some time, our roads are terrible. We need to upgrade our roads. And we were going to use, one of the concepts was to borrow money from the utility fund. I did not want to take away that money and do away with being able to do our roads. But I believe that we're going to be presented with a way to accomplish that. And I am anxious to hear what we're going to be discussing tonight more so. And I'm glad that this has been pulled off. And we'll see where we go. But I have a feeling I'm going to change my mind. Thank you.
Thank you. Anyone else?
Madam Mayor.
Yes.
First of all, I'm very glad there are 7 of us here to help make a good decision. And second of all, I'm very glad that we have a reserve to fight over. Not every city can have that opportunity to say that. Concerning taking care of the electric department, not all of us in Siloam Springs are all electric. Some of us have gas. And to me, to see it taken care of out of reserves, that kind of gives a windfall to those who have electric only. Not that we're throwing money at him, what have you, but I feel like it's not an equitable distribution. And I feel like we can do something that might be a little more to that. I know in the wintertime, or when you're thinking of, especially I know with propane, we don't deal with it here, but you always want to buy in the summertime because it goes up in the winter. And I looked at my gas bill, and it was a little higher per cubic foot or whatever they sell it to you at in the wintertime because it's higher demand. So I feel like to make this an equitable distribution, it would require more than just, well, let's take care of it out of reserves. I feel like there's something more we can do, and to see $3.8 million spent in a matter of, I don't know, 15, 20 minutes of conversation, I'm like, wow, we've spent 45 minutes to an hour over $100,000. So I feel like there's something we can look at with this, and if it does come out of reserves, I'm not here to fight it or rant against it, but I would like us to make a wise and informed decision with this. Thank you.
Thank you. Philip, do you have some comments that you would like to make at this time, or anything to say to the board about?
Well, the question came up about what the impacts would be, and as has been stated 2 meetings ago, a month ago, you asked me to bring forth some ideas about accelerating street programs and street projects. And one of the options that we put on the table was borrowing from the utility fund. And as stated in my memo, the fiscal policies that the board adopted in 2019 require a reserve, which is a very good thing to do, a reserve of 25% of your, in the case of the utilities, operating and capital cost. So that limits, to some degree, the amount of money that's available in that fund that could be loaned to another fund. But there are other options. We talked about doing some bonding for 10, 20, 30 years to do street projects. So assuming the board decides to pay this bill out of the utility fund, we could still borrow some money from it to do street projects, maybe not as much as what was originally discussed a month ago. And we can also look at what the other options were that we discussed a month ago also.
Thank you.
Mayor?
Yes, David.
From my understanding, from the memo from Administrator Patterson, we have $13 million in utility reserves with a $7 million minimum for that account, $20 million in the general fund reserves with a $5 million minimum for that account. That totals $33 million cash that we have. There may be restrictions for certain monies, but for us to be told that it has to come out of utilities, and I completely agree, it should, because it is to do with electric expenditure. But stating that this will have a negative impact on accelerating street projects, I don't quite understand why we could not use money in the general fund for streets. Streets are a function of the city government, but why are they only thought of to be borrowed from utility? The part about we've not set a precedent, but we will be setting a precedent. This was an act of God. We are a nonprofit business that has a profit center that we hope continues to stay profitable. And I don't know if everybody knows it, but for decades, we've all said that the electric department covers all the rest of the city operating because of the cash that it generates. This is different than a for-profit business that easily can pass off a cost increase or a problem with their bottom line to their customers. And as I pointed out at the last meeting, that is a GRDA, or is it a Verizon, or it is one of these like Cox Communications that every year increases their cable and internet bill. It's a captive market for these companies that have no real competition. This money this $3.8 million was passed through to us, and as Administrator Patterson said, this was low relatively compared to other cities that had fewer population. But this is what this money is set aside for, is for another flood, which could easily happen as it did in 1974. This is why money is set aside, is to cover acts of God. If, as Director Patterson said, Administrator Patterson said 2 meetings ago regarding the street workshop that we had, he said we're playing catch up. That's right, we are playing catch up. But if this board had been spending the right amount of money every year on streets, if staff had been saying we need to be catching up on these streets that are falling apart, even the list we were given at that workshop has streets that have not one iota of problem, but because somebody wants it to be done, it's on the list. If we had been spending money on things that generated a revenue, like the broadband in 2012, we had an opportunity, which was a second revenue, would have brought money in. But instead, this board decided to spend the $11 million brought in by the hospital sale. And in fact, I was even told after the library was built that the reason we were going to go ahead and spend a full $3 million on the park was because that's how much money was left in the hospital fund. The hospital money was put into reserves specifically set aside for emergencies. I heard everything under the sun after that sale in my 4 years as mayor. People consistently said, well, now that's supposed to be set aside for some health-related thing, or that's supposed to be given to a charity organization, or that's supposed to be given to the previous hospital foundation. None of which were true. That money belonged to the public. And it could have been divided out and given as a rebate if we wanted to do it. It was the sale of a city-owned asset. And I will explain once again, this city is owned by the taxpayer, the citizens that reside within the city limits. The hospital money was not a slush fund, but it certainly got treated that way. If we had been using money like that to replenish reserves or to use it for streets, then we would not be playing catch up, as Administrator Patterson said. For us to be looking at this
Madam
now,
Mayor, call to order. This has nothing to do with GRDA.
I'm sorry,
of order
Brad,
has been
all of yours
called.
had everything to do with GRDA?
Point of order has been called. Discussion is closed. Do I have a motion to approve item C, payment plan, Grand River Dam Authority?
So moved.
So moved.
Second.
We have a motion and a second. Roll call.
Burns,
Yes.
Hunt,
Yes.
Rissler,
Yes.
Allen,
Yes.
Carroll,
No.
Sappington,
Yes.
Smiley,
Yes.
Motion is approved for item C. The next item is item E and J. So Director Burns, let's go with item E first, please.
Dig that up. Madam Mayor, the only thing on that, when we look at that change order number 2, I just wanted to give a compliment on our notes on the decision log. So as you go through that and you start reading through there, it just gives you a better understanding on why that money's being spent. And I appreciate being provided that information and the highlights in red so I can hit them with my bifocals better. And that was my only comment on that. Thank you.
Anyone else on item E? If not, do I have a motion to approve change order number 2, Public Works Department?
So moved.
Second?
We have a motion and a second. Roll call.
Rissler,
Yes.
Allen,
Yes.
Carroll,
Yes.
Sappington,
Yes.
Smiley,
Yes.
Burns.
Yes.
Motion is approved. Next item is item J. Director Burns.
Item J, short and sweet again. This is a project that was well overdue, and the gentleman, James Fuller, that sat in Ward 2 for many years, and I know most people on the board knew him longer than I did. But he used to stop by my house, and 2 things he told me. Sorry, we're not giving you firemen a 3% this year, and I love you, and we appreciate everything you do, but you're not getting another pay raise, and here's the reasons why. And Sager Creek, and he sat here many a nights at the board meeting would close talk about Sager Creek, and I'm just really excited about this. I'm excited that us as a board, we had a workshop, we agreed upon this. And it's just so vitally important. We looked at community development. We've had, we all live downstream. The mayor and the city engineers have attended a few things. And I think with the development we have going on, it's just an exciting time. And it's really that next generation that is going to benefit from this. And I hope the most important thing that comes out of this is that we prevent what happened in 1974. My biggest concern is that our discharge is ramped up dramatically. We all know that, and you could see it. And right now, the creek just is, the word sad is the mildest term I can think of. And so I hope something positive comes out of this. I know we just are concerned about budget cuts. This is one of those projects that there are more grant money available, and it is, water is a very large issue across the United States of America, not just in Silent Springs, Arkansas. And so I think staff are putting together a good diverse cross-section of the community, and I'm looking forward to see what they bring us. Thank you.
Thank you. Anyone else? David?
Madam Mayor, I've already talked to Administrator Patterson about this. I have not one lick of problem with the 5 people nominated. I did ask Philip if maybe we should open this through the paper to add a couple, simply for the perception that we just, have a staff member pick who they want and then we approve it. The previous committees have had applications for public involvement, and I just wonder, 5 is fine, but why not 6 or 7? I wondered if we couldn't have some people apply from the public just to see if there was more added input.
Don, would you like to address how that was put together?
Madam Mayor, Board, Don Clark, Community Development Director. So much like the kind of the goal stated, we were looking to get people who were informed citizens that were going to be affected by the decision making of this committee. So we wanted to make sure that they had a voice on the committee. You know, property owners that either in the past have brought concerns to staff or recently brought concerns to staff about the creek and the condition of it. So, but I would have staff would have no objection, if that's the pleasure of the board, to add a couple and go through the process to do so.
Thank you, Don.
Madam Mayor,
Yes.
I am in support of Director Allen's suggestion
Add a couple more.
and open it up like he said.
Yes.
I agree if we want to open it up, but I do want to point out, I've spoke to a lot of citizens about the Sager Creek, and he's not, maybe you're being humble, Brad, but most of the people that I spoke to said, you are the leading factor in this, and I think that we owe you a thank you, because we do need to focus on Sager Creek, and I would even like to see you on that committee.
Madam Mayor, the thank you goes to James Fuller.
Yes. James, this was his passion for many years. That is true.
You know, Madam Mayor, I don't know if a lot of people know how important Sager Creek is to the city. A lot of people do not, believe it or not, understand that our logo is Sager Creek. They just think it's an S for Siloam. I've pointed this out to people that have lived here their whole life, and they had no clue that that was purposely designed. I think our former court clerk designed it. I'm blanking
Andy
out.
Litchin? Yeah.
But that's how important the city values Sager Creek.
Madam Mayor,
Yes.
I do consider Sager Creek one of our biggest assets to Siloam in promoting the economic and quality of life. I don't have a problem with putting other people on this committee. I do realize from being on other committees that sometimes the smaller the number, the more you accomplish, especially if you get too many on there. But if you want to open it up, I don't remember that we've ever advertised this type of committees. I don't know that we advertised the 2040 comprehensive plan. I don't know if we did there's another one, the broadband. I don't know if we advertised that.
Don, we did not, did we, on either of those advertise, or did we, for people to apply?
For the Comprehensive Plans Advisory Committee, we did not. I don't believe so on the other one, but.
Who chose those committees, Don?
So for the Comprehensive Plan Advisory Committee, we had a list of community representations versus the demographics, and so we reached out to people to see who would be willing to represent those demographics. Is how that committee was comprised. And for the broadband,
For the broadband committee, we tried to identify people that had knowledge of broadband within the various industries within the city. And we also had, obviously, a board member on there too. But we didn't put it out to the public because we were trying to focus on specific knowledgeable people. If I may, Madam Mayor, if it's the board's pleasure, Director Allen, if you make a motion to approve this subject to us publicly advertising for 2 additional members, we're happy to do that. And if Director Burns is willing to apply, we'll bring all those names back to the mayor and let the mayor make a nomination, because it's really the mayor's nomination. But we're happy to do that however the board sees.
Yeah, I was going to stress that too. It is absolutely the mayor's prerogative. That's part of the job. But whatever you just said is what I make the motion, that we advertise. We advertise for 2 people, and if Brad's one of them, we automatically give it to him. But put it in the public is what I'm saying.
You make the motion?
Yes.
So I'm interpreting that you move to approve subject to us advertising for 2 more members of the public to serve on the committee.
All right.
And do I have a second to that motion?
Second.
We have a motion and a second.
He
Roll
made the
call.
motion. So
Chrysler,
Yes.
Allen,
Yes.
Carroll,
Yes.
Sappington,
Yes.
Smiley.
Yes.
I'm
Motion is
sorry.
approved. No?
If if she is saying my name, I've not heard it on the last two votes.
I haven't got to her yet.
Okay.
I just couldn't hear Carol.
Carol.
I
What is your what is your
I
vote?
said yes.
sorry. Hunt.
Yes.
Thank you.
Motion is approved. All right, the last is item H, the budget amendment for the police department, purchase of qualification turning target system. Director Allen?
I don't have any qualms about this. I had also talked to Philip about this. I am probably one of the longest persons to experience the effects of this thing because it's very loud for people who live out in that area. And as Philip said, there's not been any complaints, but it was put in there long before all the housing development got built up. It's if people aren't aware, it's north or northwest of the sewer plant, and it's up against a graded berm. And I was really and they used to shoot north. I was really glad Philip said that they moved that west to shoot west when the JBU bike trail went up. I've always been nervous about it, honestly, because of the risk with the added home development, but then also JBU is right there, and students, they built the trail on the north side by the creek, and so it's just always made me nervous. I did ask Philip, have we thought about having our men and women train in an internal inside one, but of course that's different than actually getting the training outside. I think it's great to be buying a turning target system, but I also suggested maybe we should consider looking at some property the city owns further out, even maybe outside the city limits, to further get it away from population. And he said they were going to talk about that. So I just wanted to make everybody aware. It's in a location that decades ago it didn't have anybody around it. So I'm not against the thing. I just wanted to inform.
Okay,
Thank you.
Thank you. Anyone else? If not, do I have a motion to approve item H, budget amendment, police department?
So moved.
We have a motion
Second.
and a second. Roll call.
Allen.
Yes.
Carol.
Yes.
Sappington.
Yes.
Smiley.
Yes.
Burns.
Yes.
Hunt.
Yes.
Rissler.
Yes.
Motion is approved. Next on the agenda is our regularly scheduled items. First is item L, ordinance 2116, second reading, amending section 102-21 of the City Municipal Code, rezoning from R2 and R3 to R4, property at 610 West Tahlequah Street. Ben?
Yes, thank you, Madam Mayor and members of the board. Ben Rhodes, Senior Planner. As the mayor stated, before you is the second reading for the rezoning at 610 West Tahlequah Street. The applicant is requesting to rezone the R2 and R3 property to R4 multifamily. This is consistent with the current use of the property and the future land use map. Staff has not received any public comments since the last reading, and we are recommending approval. Stand by for any questions. Thank you.
Thank you, Ben. Is there anyone in the audience that would like to make a comment on ordinance 21-16? If there is not, directors, any comments or questions? If not, do I have a motion to place ordinance 2116 on its second reading, suspending the rules and reading title only?
So moved.
Second.
We have a motion and a second. Roll call.
Carol.
Yes.
Sappington.
Yes.
Smiley.
Yes.
Burns.
Yes.
Hunt.
Yes.
Rissler.
Yes.
Allen.
Yes.
Motion is approved. Philip?
Ordinance number 21-16, an ordinance amending section 102-21 of the Siloam Springs Municipal Code, City Zoning Map, rezoning from R2 and R3 to R4 property located at 610 West Tahlequah Street.
Thank you. Next item is item M, ordinance 21-17, second reading, amending City Municipal Code, Chapter 102 zoning and Chapter 82 sanitation, private drives. Ben?
Yes, thank you again, Madam Mayor and Board. Before you is the second reading of the ordinance updating the zoning code and sanitation code with respect to the use of private drives in the PD zone district. As a reminder, the update allows for sanitation and police patrols to use privately maintained drives within a planned development. Staff and Planning Commission are recommending approval, and we're available for any of your questions. Thank you.
Thank you, Ben. Is there anyone in the audience that'd like to comment on ordinance 21-17? If there is not, directors, questions or comments from you? There being none, I will ask for a motion to place ordinance 21-17 on its second reading, suspending the rules and reading title only.
So moved.
Second.
We have a motion and a second. Roll call.
Sappington,
Yes.
Smiley,
Yes.
Burns,
Yes.
Hunt,
Yes.
Whistler,
Yes.
Allen,
Yes.
Carroll.
Yes.
Motion is approved. Philip?
Ordinance number 21-17, an ordinance amending Chapter 82 Sanitation and Chapter 102 Zoning of the Municipal Code with respect to private drives and requirements for collection of commercial refuse containers.
Thank you. Next is item N, ordinance 21-18, second reading, amending City Municipal Code, Chapter 102, zoning, body art. Ben?
Yes, thank you again, Madam Mayor and Board. For your final ordinance this evening, you're considering the second reading of the update to Use Unit 22 with respect to body art businesses. As a reminder, the proposed update allows for these uses by right within the I2 zone and also as a special use within the C2 zone district. Staff and the Planning Commission remain supportive of the ordinance, and we're available for any questions. Thank you.
Thank you. Is there anyone in the audience that would like to address ordinance 21-18? There is not. Directors, comments or questions? There being none, I will ask for a motion to place ordinance 21-18 on its second reading, suspending the rules and reading title only.
So moved.
Second.
Director Hunt, did you make that motion?
Yes, I did.
Okay. Thank you. Roll call.
Smiley,
Yes.
Burns,
No.
Hunt,
Yes.
Whistler,
Yes.
Allen,
Yes.
Carroll,
Yes.
Sappington,
Yes.
Motion is approved. Philip?
Ordinance number 21-18, an ordinance amending Chapter 102 Zoning Code of the Municipal Code with respect to Use Unit 22 for body modification businesses.
Thank you. Next is our staff reports. Item O, subdivision and housing construction update. Ben?
Just one moment while I get this up. Well, thank you again, Madam Mayor and Board. So I was asked to put together a brief snapshot showing where the city is with new subdivision and housing construction. So on the map I'm displaying, you see the current preliminary and final plats. This is on the north side of the city. The preliminary plat projects are shown in the red hatching, and in the green are the final plats. And just as a reminder to everyone, a final plat allows for housing construction, while the preliminary plats are indicative of future housing that will be coming online with new lots within approximately a 6 to 12 month time frame once those subdivisions are completed. Here you see the same data just showing to the south side of town, the other area where we've seen a lot of activity. As you have seen in the staff report, there are 638 single-family lots planned and 66 two-family lots. This adds 770 total future units inside Siloam Springs. When factoring in subdivisions that have been approved in the county, we add another 130 single-family lots, and I believe 30 of those have the possibility of being annexed into the city when that final plat comes online. Total dwelling units when you're adding in city and county is 900. when looking at the final plats, we are seeing that the lot inventory is quickly being depleted, with only 109 single-family lots available and 23 two-family lots. As I mentioned in the memo, that the subdivisions approved, but the ones that never got underway are now considered expired and are not included on the map or in the figures in the memo. Subdivisions that are already built out with no available lots are also excluded. So we are only considering new subdivisions within the last few years and not infill lots or in other established neighborhoods. As more preliminary plats come back for final plats, we will see that lot inventory recover. So there's definitely a throughput issue right now, but it's going to be fixed in the future. And with that, staff is available for any of your questions. Thank you.
Thank you, Ben. Directors, any questions or comments for Ben? There being none?
Madam Mayor?
Yes.
I thought Director Sappington was
I
going to
was
say
going
something.
to.
Go ahead. Go ahead.
That's okay.
I appreciate this information. I know that I've just expressed concerns, not really concerns, but it seems like we have approved a lot of significant development and preliminary development plans for subdivisions over the last couple of years, and my concern would just be that we're going to saturate and maybe things aren't going to get done. I mean, there's a number of things that could happen, but I did some just a little bit of math, which was not my strong suit, based on our preliminary census data. It looks like between 2000 and 2010, we had a growth rate of about 40% in town, but between 2010 and 2020, the next 10 years, the growth rate was quite a bit lower at about 15%. So I would think it would be safe to assume that that could be what we would be in the neighborhood of over the next 10 years. Maybe it could be bigger since the rest of Northwest Arkansas is getting bigger, but it seems that what we've got planned that is being developed now will be sufficient for that growth over the next 10 years. And so I just think that's something for us to keep in mind.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. Thank you.
Madam Mayor.
Yes, Myra.
Ben, thank you for doing this because it was an interest of mine. We've talked about it a lot. I appreciate the fact that you've shown us the locations and what's going on in certain places. But my concern is, are we going to be able to look at this in comparison to what's already built? Like how many houses are single development, how many are duplexes right now? Get those numbers in there. And are we going to meet the needs of our citizens? You know, like we talked about in the CPAC meeting today, do we have the right kind of housing being built at this time, looking at these numbers?
That's a very interesting question, a very important question, and one I don't want to shoot from the hip, just answering something like that.
I understand.
I am working on a housing analysis, which is one of the board goals that will flesh that out more. I will just say anecdotally that we are really showing a strong showing in the single family and not as much in duplex and multifamily. So that's something that just the numbers speak for themselves, and that is that appropriate or not? I don't know the answer to that question. It really depends on who the end users are, and are they renting or not, and that type of thing. But I think I would just say, more will come on that. So just, give us some time, and we'll present something a little bit more polished for you. So.
Madam Mayor.
Yes.
And to your point of, are we building the right thing for what our citizens need? And you're saying we're kind of heavy on single family. One thing that I do hear a lot and see a lot is just the need for affordable homes, and affordable as in less than what they're able to find right now, which would probably be more multifamily types of dwellings. So another thing to keep in mind.
Well, and I would say that the market is responding to that. And the laws of supply and demand, you put more supply out there, the cost is going to go down because it's less of a rarity to find. So,
Madam Mayor.
Yes.
Thank you, Ben.
Anyone else?
Madam Mayor, I'll
Yes.
hop in. I mean, I don't want to take away your thank you, Ben. But on
You're
that
welcome.
comprehensive plan, and I brought this up before in a workshop, I understand the need. I think what I brought up before is the character. And I'll use Ward 2 as an example. I have several multifamily developments, and the parking is extremely poor. And it just, you know, it's rough. When you go, I want to compare the corridor, but I think of historical Siloam, and I think of character, and I think 20 years down the road, it's a tough one. We're addressing a need here, a short-term need, but in long-term, what does that become, and what does that look like? And we're going to pass that baton on to that next board, because none of us will be here. I don't care how many vitamins you take or what you take. It's just a fact of life. And I just want to make sure that when we pass that on, we don't leave a problem. And I think that's part. I think it was part of our concern on that one there. We know the need. We know what the economical driver is. We understand all that. I don't know. I understand real estate going up. We've got folks doing great infill jobs. But at the end of the day, material costs and all those, it's just a tough one. And I think we're going to do our part as a city with money-wise for our employees. But, how do you get more city employees to live inside the city? And they have, when you compare Gentry's building it's less. It's more affordable. And so it's a tough one. And I don't want your job, so I'll be interested what you kick out with us. I appreciate it.
welcome.
Thank you. Brad, anyone else? Thank you, Ben.
Thank you.
Next is the American Rescue Plan Act funds recommendation. Christina?
Mayor, members of the board, Christina Patricius, Finance Director. The city received the first of 2 deposits from the state that will total just over $3.5 million and for the American Rescue Plan Act. Although there's a broad range of ways the city may use the grant funds, staff's first consideration was to fund the broadband project. Unfortunately, the rules of the grant have not been finalized, and the interim rules are unclear as to whether the city can use the funds in that manner. Several other options were considered and rejected as outlined in the memo, but rejection generally involved not meeting the grant requirements or taking on added risk. As a result, staff proposes using the grant funds to pay for payroll and covered benefits of the city's EMTs and paramedics. This is what's called an administrative allowance and would allow the city to meet the requirements of the grant without impacting the city's budget. Basically, what we would be doing is replacing the operational funding with grant funds, which would free up operational funds for the board to do with as they saw fit, basically. And with that, staff's available for questions.
Thank you. Directors, do you have any questions or comments for Christina?
Christina, and that was also, who else was listed underneath that? Some services folks, or are we just doing primarily public safety?
We are just doing public safety. We're only doing public safety, and it's not an additional amount of money. It's just we're replacing, and basically what that will do is it'll allow the board to do whatever they choose to with the money without the grant requirements.
Is there anyone else? Philip, if this is, are we looking for a recommendation from the board to bring back something for them to vote on?
Well, Madam Mayor, Madam Mayor and Board, the idea was to bring this forward so that there could be a discussion. As Christina said, there's certain things we can use the money for, and broadband's a big discussion. They haven't released the final details on broadband. It appears that the speed is going to go up, and say, you're looking for communities that don't have 100 speed upload and 100 speed download, but you're underserved, and we don't meet that definition necessarily of underserved. So the idea that we put together was to say, what option would we have to use that money here, replace it with money, the money that's saved, put that in another bucket, and then the board could decide at a later date to how to do that. And if the feasibility study comes back for broadband and the board wishes to move forward with that, then maybe there's money there to kick that off. Based on the discussion tonight, maybe that money is used to accelerate street projects. That decision doesn't have to be made today necessarily, and no decision is being asked to be made today, but if there's consensus with the board, I think we would come back with a resolution asking the board to adopt that resolution to be very clear how that money is going to be spent, the American Rescue money, because the last thing we want to do is put ourselves in a position where the federal government comes in and audits the money and we have to pay it back. It's a very unique situation. Typically, as many of you are probably already aware, typically with federal money, we apply for grants, we say exactly how we're going to spend the money, and then we get the grant. Here, the federal government is basically saying, here's the money, go spend it. Be sure you spend it accordingly, and we'll likely audit you to make sure you spend it accordingly. So we want to just be very clear on the paper trail. So if there's no objection from the board, and again, there's no decision tonight, but based on any discussion, likely we'll come back either the next meeting or in a month with a resolution to ask you to adopt that, to say, yes, that's how the money is going to be spent.
Okay, thank you.
Madam Mayor, I just
Yes.
wanted to clarify for whoever's watching what I understand, Philip. You're saying emergency medical technicians, paramedics, those who are obvious people who would deal with COVID-19, they're going to get paid. It's just going to be with a different dollar than what they would be paid if we didn't get this money. Normally they'd be getting paid from Pile A, but because Pile B is coming from the federal government, we'll pay just that select group, which is really a very smart way to do it, because, they're getting paid either way, but it frees up money, as you said, that would normally go to payroll to do whatever the board decides later. So will we say later, in terms of whatever you're going to recommend later, that we would have the 3.5 million total to address in another, like streets or broadband or whatever?
I wouldn't put that in the resolution.
I guess it'd be 1.7 per year, really, yeah, because it's not all coming at once.
Correct.
Yeah.
I wouldn't suggest we put that in the resolution,
Right,
but the
right.
resolution would just state that the American Rescue Funds, $3.5 million, whatever it is, will be used to cover certain expenses that the city has, and that creates the paper trail.
Right, yeah.
And I would be remiss if I didn't say that Christina has been diligently following all this, which is crazy, because the interim final rules continue to change. It's sort of in the middle of other issues that continue to change.
And knowing the federal government, it'll change again.
And so just trying to follow what we're allowed to do, and trying to keep track of what that money can be spent for and how it might be best for this city and this community to react to that money. She's done a wonderful job of keeping me up to date on what we can spend it for, and she's told me a number of times, no, Philip, we can't spend it for that. But the idea is exactly what you said, Director Allen, which is to create a second bucket of money, use this money to pay salaries, and then the savings from those, put that in the second bucket and decide what to do with that money at a later date.
And as Christina put in her report, that group of employees is 2.5 million annually anyway, and it's definitely going to exceed the grant amount within 2 years.
Yes.
So it'll all be used. Yeah. Good.
Madam Mayor.
Yes.
Thank you for all the information. I know working with grants is a problem, but looking at the numbers and the expense need to be spent by the 2024 year.
Mm-hmm.
If we can do that, then I think that's a wise thing to do.
Madam Mayor?
Yes.
Am I the only one that notices that if we do something good for the community, it looks like we're basically getting that money back? That's what it feels like to me, indirectly, over 3 years. I mean, it depends on how you look at stuff, right?
Right.
That's my positive observation for the evening. Thank you.
Right is right.
All right. I think you've got direction from the board. I think that most of them, from what I've heard, approve of what you are recommending. So you'll be coming back to us later with a resolution. Thank you, Christina. Next is our administrator's report. Philip?
Thank you, Madam Mayor. In the expenditure department, the electric department purchased a number of 240 and 120 volt pad transformers for $47,145 and one large 480 three-phase pad mount transformer for $31,864. All of those are inventory and for new customers as we continue to see the growth in the city. The sales tax receipts for July, the city is up 16.6% for the month. Year to date is up 15%, just over 15%, 15.1. And the county's, the city's portion of the county sales tax for the month, we're up almost 23%, 22.8. And year to date, we're right at 23%, 23.2% ahead of projections. With the generous donation tonight from the American Legion family for the Kayak launch and ADA fishing pier, we have received to date $41,000 of the $49,250 that was originally committed. I believe there's a couple of other entities that will likely make donations that'll put us over the $50,000 mark, but we continue to receive those donations, and I want to thank everyone who has made those donations and or in the future may commit to making those donations. Director Hunt referenced it earlier today. The 2020 census final estimates, I think, are out. I don't know, as of April 1, 2020, the census states that we had 17,287 population. So that's an increase of just under 15%, just under 1.5% a year over a 10-year period. Benton County grew by just over 28%. Washington County grew by 21%. And the state as a whole grew by 3.3%. So one of the things with census that will be coming is we'll be working with Northwest Arkansas Regional Planning Commission to look at the census data. And one of the things we'll have to do is to start redrawing wards to try to make sure that the wards are as close to possible being equal population. So that'll be something that we'll be working, and ultimately the board will have to approve at some point in the near future. But the census numbers of every city, the state, redistricting, we've all been waiting for the census numbers to try to figure this out, so it's going to be something that everybody will be working on. As it relates to the COVID update, as I've told you before, the Arkansas Center for Health Improvement has finally put out local numbers of new cases again. And so in the last 3 weeks, the city of Siloam has increased from 51 to 91 new cases per 10,000 population. And in the Benton County and Washington County, they track it on daily active cases per 1,000 population. And as of August 11th, the numbers were 6.6 cases in Benton County, 8.8 cases in Washington County, and that's up from June 13th, where we were less than a half a case per 1,000 population. Madam Mayor, I'm available for any questions. Thank you.
Thank you. At this time, we have our director's reports. And so tonight, I would like to ask that we start with Director Smiley, and we'll come around and end with Director Carroll.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. I would like to, first of all, thank the American Legion for their donation. I think that's, we really appreciate that. I appreciated the comprehensive plan update, the housing update. Thank you, Ben. The duplex numbers I thought would be higher than what they were, so I was really surprised at that, and I was kind of glad to see that. When we're talking about parking, I think that is the area where I have seen some significant parking problems, is the area where the duplexes are. And Christina, thank you very much for all that you've done on the rescue plan and looking into how we can do the money. I also want to thank all of the American citizens that were over at Afghanistan. I appreciate what you did. Thank you.
Thank you. Director Allen?
Thank you, Madam Mayor. I want to express that I'm very appreciative to our military veterans who donated to the pier, and most certainly for their service to our nation, and I appreciate them coming tonight. I also appreciate those who came for the public open hearing, Mr. Varnado, Mr. Jones, and Mr. Bergthold. I appreciate their suggestions, and I am very concerned hearing about civil rights violations. I want to say that because we did approve the Sager Creek Advisory Committee, we didn't actually name them, so I thought the public should know the specialties behind these people. Travis Cheney is a restoration specialist with the Illinois River Watershed Partnership. He obviously will be a huge help on Sager Creek. Luke Davis is a resident property owner. Ron Jeffries is a resident property owner. Bob Hoffman is a property owner, and Patty Island is a resident. Number 4 on my list, I'm going to ask city staff to follow through on a directed resolution that was not followed through. November 2014, this board passed Resolution 3814, a resolution assigning the name James Fuller Field to soccer field number 1 at the Sager Creek Soccer Complex. James Fuller was an advocate for youth sports in Sager Creek throughout his tenure on the city board of directors, serving from 1988 to 2013. James Fuller was an enthusiastic supporter of the Sager Creek Soccer Complex in particular. The many achievements and contributions of James Fuller, including service in the U.S. Air Force and National Guard, Deacon of First Assembly of First Assembly of God Church, respected businessman, and a lifetime of advocacy on behalf of the citizens of Siloam Springs are worthy of honor and remembrance. That the field number 1 of the Sager Creek Soccer Complex should be designated and hereafter known as James Fuller Field. The city administrator is authorized to purchase and install appropriate signage and take such other and further actions as may be appropriate to carry out the intent of this resolution. And in the minutes, that was November 4th, and in the minutes of November 18th, 2014, was the follow-up to this. A motion was made by Smiley and seconded by Jones to approve Resolution 3814, James Fuller Field at Sager Creek Soccer Complex. Cameron thanked the Fuller family for being there. He pointed out that during James' tenure, he made every attempt to get the soccer complex moving. He said the first field will memorialize his integral part of the project's completion. The mayor at that time read the resolution in its entirety. Kraft thanked Cameron for doing this. He said James was a big supporter. Burns said he was honored to fill James's spot on the board and would carry on his obligation and passion for quality of life in Siloam. Teresa Fuller Oswald, Fuller's daughter, said this was exciting. His passion for this town and its residents shone through him. She is proud and honored and would be humbled by your gratitude to recognize him in this way. James came and watched her boys play soccer and immediately said Siloam needs something like this for the youth of this town and parents to go support their children. Nevertheless, this never got done. It's frustrating that staff that were employed at the time are still in position at this time, and it did not get instituted or administered to honor James Fuller serving 25 years on this city board of directors. It's caused embarrassment and frustration for the family, and it was unnecessary. I want to see this installed with an appropriate flag banner with James Fuller Field in place of the flag that now says Field Number 1. And I hope we can get to this as soon as possible. For 7 years, this has been not followed through, and I think it's high past time. And that's all I have. Thank you.
Thank you. Director Hunt?
This is the first I was aware of that resolution 3814, but I would second the idea to follow up on that and make sure that happens for the Fuller family and Mr. Fuller's memory. Thank you also. I echo the thank yous to the American Legion for their donation, and also to those of you who came and spoke tonight. We always appreciate hearing from citizens. School started this week, and as far as I've heard, which is not anything, which I'm taking as no news is good news, so it must have started well, and I hope it continues. I know it's another challenging year. I commend the teachers and students and parents for getting this far, dealing with all they've had to deal with, and for being willing to start up again with the same kind of thing. We hoped that it was going to be past us, and it's not, but here we are. So best wishes to all the students, teachers, and parents this year. JBU starts on Monday. New students will be arriving tomorrow, so we're excited about that. Got another little statement here. Try to get through it quickly. Okay, when sitting in on the governor's town hall a few weeks ago, when reading social media posts from citizens who spend a great deal of time attempting to discredit and even demonize city staff and board members, when reading emails from citizens who demand that we make Siloam the way it used to be by being more Christian, I've been reminded time and time again of a verse in Proverbs. It's Proverbs 15:1 that says, "A soft word turns away wrath, but a harsh word stirs up anger." I don't think of that because I've witnessed soft words, but rather just the opposite. Soft words seem to be a rare commodity these days, whereas harsh words are used in abundance. And in my opinion, those harsh words aren't doing much other than causing a greater wedge. It saddens me that the days of respectfully agreeing to disagree are gone. It saddens me that in a nation where we do have the freedom to choose what to believe and what to do, so many struggle with making decisions because of all the noise coming at them from those who are pushing their own agendas. It saddens me that even in our own community, there's division. In my opinion, and as a Christ follower myself, I truly believe that those of us who call ourselves Christians can do a better job of bridging the divide and creating unity by listening to, respecting, and extending grace to each other. It's okay. Good. It's good to have opinions. I admire those who are passionate about issues. But again, in my opinion, and it's my opinion, my 2 cents isn't worth much more than that, using soft words to express those opinions does go so much farther than do harsh words. We're living in challenging times. Let's do what we can to make it easier for all those who are impacted by those tough times, and that's pretty much all of us. And before I end, I want to thank those who I know consistently pray for our city leadership, and for all of the citizens within Siloam Springs. I myself get a text before every board meeting from a prayer warrior I know, letting me know she's praying, and I know many others do as well. It means a great deal.
Thank you, Director Hunt. Director Burns?
How do I even follow these people? Steve Beers, and now these JBU folks are just, you cannot keep up with them. They're Hallmark USA. Wow, and I will take the higher road. You could read my statement. Renee did a great job. That's my response. I'm not a big fan of disrespect, and that's just how it rolls. Gentleman from 1100 Hickory Lane, you're 100% correct. You should not have received a citation. And you're 100% correct that the Aquatic Center has a ton of issues, and this summer we tackled them. And you shouldn't have had to pay full price for that pass. We had some staffing issues. I would ask the youth of Siloam next year to please get involved in the lifeguard program. It could be a life-changing thing. It could lead to a life of public safety. I had 4 children in my home. 2 of them did that for many years. You can ride a bike. You don't have to own a car, and you can make your own money. And you can learn life-saving skills and swimming skills that you could take to in life, and maybe one day even become an amphibious warrior and serve our country voluntarily, no matter what your religion or sexual preference is. That's what we get to do as Americans, and they walk among us today. So keep them in mind. Thank you.
Thank you. Director Sappington.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. I echo many of the words that have been spoken tonight. This laid heavy on my heart the moment that we were saying the pledge, that those words that we say need to resonate, and they need to be meaningful when we say them. Sometimes we let things be said that we're not thinking about what's coming out of our mouth or what those words could mean to someone else. And so it's true what Director Hunt said. You know, I don't get on social media, and some criticize me for that I'm not involved, I'm not keeping up on things, but I feel like if someone wants to get a hold of me, I give them my personal cell phone number, and they can call me or text me anytime, and I'll be glad to talk to them. I just, my mother told me when I was young that fools' names and fools' faces always end up in public places. And so I kind of see that, you know, hey, watch what you're doing, because it's not just the person that you're saying it to. It's the whole world that's seeing it. So that's how I was raised, and so that's where I'm going to stand by. Thank you, Eric and Todd. Todd, you live in my grandma's house. Yeah, I mean, I spent many a day there, so I had to tell you some of the stories and show you pictures of the old wallpaper there. But yeah, when you said that, I went, yeah. So glad you guys came in. Appreciate it. Mr. Jones, I don't know what we can do to help him, but I'm sure that there's things that's been tried, and if there's more that we can do, then I think that we should go ahead and do that. Everybody that was here tonight, the American Legion, it was wonderful that the city is getting behind us on the Kayak launch. The CPAC committee today was working on some of the concerns and ways to improve parking. We talked a lot about some of the parking issues downtown, where people that, a gentleman wants to go to the barber shop and he has to park 2 blocks away because an owner of one of the other businesses is parked directly in front of the barber shop. So I just want to bring attention to the downtown parking that we have provided that doesn't ever seem to get full. And there's the one off of one by the museum and the one right down here. And so I just encourage you to use those if you're a business owner, so the people that want to frequent your establishment will have access to it. Because we don't want to go back to parking meters. And the last thing, and this really just set me aback, it was on the news this evening. One of the school districts not too far from us is segregating the kids into those that wear masks and those that don't wear masks, and setting them like that in the classroom. And that division of that there is going to hurt the public so much, because that goes back to black and white. And if you were alive in that era, you knew what drinking out of the white's water fountain and the black's water fountain was. Now we've got kids sitting at, you sit over there where the kids with no mask, so if something does happen, you'll be quarantined. But those over here that's with mask, if someone gets COVID, as long as you don't have any symptoms or anything and you've worn your mask, you can come to school. We're making a lot of decisions that's going to hurt psychologically those that are involved with it, not just kids, but the parents and everybody. If I had to teach in a classroom like that, I couldn't do it because I couldn't make differences between my kids. And so there's lots of things going on out in our nation right now, and we do need prayer for it. And we just need to be mindful that we're setting a trend, and the decisions that we make affect not just us, not just the people here now, but the people that are going to be born and raised here. I'm done.
Thank you, Marla.
You're welcome.
Director Rissler.
I want to thank the American Legion for the donation. I'm looking forward to that project. I want to thank Todd, Eric, and Blake for coming, because it's not always easy to come stand in front of a board of directors and say what you have to say. And so I appreciate you doing that. Since the last board meeting, I had multiple employees ask me about the day off that was being offered for COVID shots. I was asked on multiple occasions how offering this is fair when there are multiple reasons individuals do not get the shot. It was expressed to me, what if their family got the shot and they didn't because of medical reasons? It was also identified that some employees have religious reasons for not getting the shot. They identified that they never immunized their children because of their religion. Are these people being discriminated against? I was asked what happened with HIPAA, and I can't say. For those that remember, I never identified my opinion. Instead, I made the comment solely out of fairness that if you do this, it should be offered to those that have already taken the shot. I do feel our nation has stepped over some boundaries that one day will end up in court. I don't know the legal ramifications to all that has occurred. I will seek to find answers the best I can. I do not want anyone to be discriminated against in any manner. I think employees and citizens deserve to have answers to these questions. As some of you remember, we were presented with a potential issue regarding our noise ordinance last year. I've requested that we discuss this ordinance at the next meeting. I'm requesting that all directors receive an email within the next couple of days identifying this ordinance so they can have the appropriate time to review the ordinance and make phone calls if necessary. I, for one, like to utilize my multiple resources to make sure I have a clear understanding of the ordinance. I've made a request on 2 different occasions to Philip to look at specific alternatives to the solar ordinance. One process that I have found that many communities are going to is offering green power to customers who do not want to invest in solar but doesn't mind paying the higher cost for green alternatives. This green alternative is usually certified so that there is a justification in the higher cost. In return, the solar customers could potentially receive a greater return than what is being currently offered with the new ordinance. Since this ordinance has been in place, 13 new customers have signed up. One of these customers, who is very educated, didn't realize how the ordinance affected them. I then asked Philip to create and send out flyers explaining what the ordinance is saying in a way that all electrical customers could understand. Last month, these flyers were distributed in the utility bills. Since then, no one has signed up to receive the solar. A lot of people feel like the city is against solar. They feel the ordinance prevents our community from going green. When we voted on the ordinance, I focused on and wanted to make sure the customers that had already purchased solar was grandfathered in more than the content of the ordinance. I felt like with what the directors were being presented left us without having much of a choice. Again, I focused on the current solar customers. Using this platform, I would like to see that we have more conversation with solar customers and look at the green alternatives that could benefit citizens in purchasing green power and benefit the current solar customers. I had an interesting conversation this week with a city employee on how we need to balance quality of life projects with infrastructure needs. Let me make it clear. In my opinion, this has been off balance for far too long. We need to focus on infrastructure, taking care of our needs like streets, sidewalks, fire, police, and Sayre Creek. And then, if money is left over, look at quality of life. As I identified to this individual, who is it that identifies what quality of life means to the citizens? To me, I think the museum should have been brought into the umbrella of the city at the same time the library was. To me, knowing and preserving our history falls under quality of life. Quality of life is subjective to the individual. But like I said, our infrastructure and safety are the most important needs we have today. The last thing on my list is an invitation to join me and a few others to pray for our community, our leaders, and our nation on September 11th here at City Hall in the parking lot at 10 a.m. We are fighting battles in our community that each of us are not aware of, but I believe there is strength in numbers. Coming together, we can pray for what is going on in Afghanistan, which is horrific, our leaders locally and nationally, and our community as a whole. The best thing we can do for one another is lift each other up in thoughts and prayer.
Thank you, Lisa. Director Carroll?
Thank you, Madam Mayor. I'd like to address something that I think all of us are dealing with. We've had a pandemic that we thought was going away that has resurfaced. And if you didn't have it before, you probably have it now. Virus fatigue. That's what I look at it as anyway. You know, do we mask? Do we not mask? Do we take a vaccine or do we not? And these are becoming very divisive in our community, in our nation. I would ask that we as citizens of the city of Siloam Springs, that we look to unity. We look to coming together in our common bond, our common goal, and to do what God has called us to do and who He's called us to be. And one of the best things I could recommend for us is to finish with strength. And I think the Apostle Paul, who wrote the majority of the New Testament, says it well. 2 Timothy 4:7, I have fought the good fight. I have finished the race. I have kept the faith. And I would just encourage us to fight the good fight, finish strong, and keep the faith. With that, Madam Mayor, I motion to adjourn.
Do I have a second?
Second.
We have a motion and a second to adjourn. All those in favor say aye.
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 Those opposed, same sign. We are adjourned.